The fluorescent lights above the bakery counter buzzed with that persistent hum that had become the soundtrack to my exhaustion. I could feel it vibrating through my skull, mixing with a headache that had taken residence there 3 days ago and refused to leave. My fingers trembled slightly as I gripped the edge of the glass display case, the cool surface grounding me, reminding me I was still standing, still breathing, still here. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, my voice cracking on the last syllable. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. "I need to cancel the birthday cake order, the one for tomorrow, under Sarah Mitchell." The bakery girl couldn't have been more than 19, with perfect skin and eyes that had never known real worry. Blinked at me with something between confusion and pity. Behind her, rows of pristine cakes sat in refrigerated glory, their frosting swirls and fondant decorations mocking me with their perfection. Somewhere in that chilled case was supposed to be Tommy's cake, Superman theme, blue and red, his favorite. "Oh." She clicked her pen nervously. "Are you sure? It's already decorated. We'd have to charge you a cancellation fee." "I understand." My throat constricted. I couldn't look at her anymore, couldn't bear to see the judgment or the pity or whatever emotion would flicker across her young, untroubled face. My eyes dropped to my worn sneakers, the left one held together with fabric glue, the laces frayed beyond repair. I don't have the money. I thought I would, but..." The words died. What was the point of explaining? That the overtime shift I'd been counting on got cut? That Tommy's prescription cost twice what I'd budgeted? That choosing between your child's medication and his birthday cake wasn't really a choice at all, but it still felt like carving out a piece of your own heart with a dull knife. The bell above the bakery door chimed, a bright, cheerful sound that belonged to a different world. Cold November air swept in, carrying the scent of rain and something else. Something expensive. Leather. Cedar. The kind of cologne that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I didn't turn around. Couldn't. I was trying too hard to hold myself together, to keep the tears burning behind my eyes from spilling over. My fingernails dug into my palms, creating small crescents of pain that kept me focused, kept me from falling apart completely. "The cancellation fee is $30, the bakery girl continued, her voice dropping to something gentler. She'd probably seen this before. Probably saw desperate mothers every day, women choosing between birthday cakes and electricity bills, women like me who'd once had different dreams. $30. It might as well have been $3,000. Can I pay it next week?" The humiliation burned through me, hot and acidic. "I get paid Friday. I could..." "We need payment at the time of cancellation, ma'am. Policy." "Ma'am." I was 26 years old, and I was being called ma'am by a teenager, and I was canceling my son's birthday cake, and tomorrow I'd have to watch his face when he realized there would be no cake, no party, nothing but the small wooden car I'd carved for him late at night when he was sleeping, using a kitchen knife and wood scraps from behind the furniture store. The presence behind me shifted. I could feel it, the way you feel a storm approaching, that change in air pressure that makes your skin prickle. Footsteps, deliberate and measured, approached the counter. Not the rushed shuffle of other customers, but something controlled, purposeful. "Add the cake to my order." The voice was male, deep, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Something European buried under years of American English. Cultured, smooth as the whiskey I could no longer afford to buy. "And remove the cancellation fee." I turned then, shock overriding my shame. He stood less than 3 feet away, and the first thing I noticed was his hands. They rested casually at his sides, but there was nothing casual about them. Strong hands, scarred across the knuckles, with a platinum watch that caught the fluorescent light and threw it back like a warning. His suit was black, perfectly tailored, the kind that moved like a second skin. No tie. The top button of his crisp white shirt undone, revealing a glimpse of a tattoo that disappeared beneath the fabric. My gaze traveled upward, sharp jaw, the shadow of stubble that looked intentional, rather than neglectful. Lips that might have been sensual if they weren't pressed into such a severe line. A nose that had been broken at least once and healed with character. And eyes. God. His eyes. Dark, almost black in the bakery's harsh lighting, and fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Not unkind, but penetrating, like he could see through all my carefully constructed walls straight into the mess of fear and desperation I'd been hiding. He couldn't have been much older than 30, maybe 32. Young for the kind of power that radiated from him like heat from asphalt in summer. "I can't accept," I started, my voice barely above a whisper. "You're not accepting anything." He didn't look away from me, didn't blink. "I'm purchasing a cake. What you do with it is your business." Behind him, I noticed for the first time, 2 men stood near the door. They wore simpler suits, but their stance was unmistakable, alert, watchful, their eyes constantly scanning the bakery's interior. Security, or something like it. "Sir, that's very generous, but—" the bakery girl interjected, uncertain. "How much?" he asked, still looking at me, "for the cake and whatever else she needs?" "I don't need—" My protest died under his gaze. "How much?" he repeated, this time to the girl behind the counter. $85 for the Superman cake, and if she wants to add everything." He finally turned away from me, reaching into his jacket. I caught a glimpse of something dark holstered beneath his arm, there and gone so quickly I might have imagined it. He pulled out a wallet, Italian leather, thick with cards and cash, and extracted several bills without counting them. "Whatever decorations, candles, the works, and add 3 more cakes to the order. Your best ones. 3 more?" The bakery girl looked like she'd stumbled into a dream. "My men will pick everything up tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp." He placed what looked like $500 bills on the counter. "Keep the change." The world tilted slightly. I grabbed the display case harder, my knuckles going white. "Why?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "Why would you—" He turned back to me, and this time something flickered in those dark eyes. Not pity. Something else. Something that made my pulse quicken, for reasons I didn't want to examine. "Every child deserves a birthday cake." His voice dropped lower, meant only for me. Especially when his mother would give anything to provide it. How did he know I had a son? Had he heard the whole conversation? Heat crept up my neck, shame and something else, awareness, uncomfortable and electric, making my skin flush. "I can't repay you. The admission cost me everything. I'm not asking you to." He studied my face like he was memorizing it, cataloging every detail. The dark circles under my eyes, the chapped lips, the way my coat hung too loose on my frame from weight I'd lost and couldn't afford to regain. "What's your name?" I shouldn't tell him. Every instinct screamed warning. Men who carried guns and traveled with security details and threw around $100 bills like singles weren't safe, weren't normal, weren't the kind of people someone like me, invisible, struggling, barely holding on, should ever interact with. "Sarah," I whispered. "Sarah Mitchell. Sarah." He repeated it slowly, like tasting wine. "How old is your son?" "He'll be 7. Tomorrow." Something crossed his face then, too quick to read. Pain? Memory? It vanished before I could identify it. 7 is a good age. He reached into his pocket again, and I tensed, but he only pulled out a business card, matte black, with silver lettering I couldn't read from where I stood. He held it out to me. "If you ever need anything, Sarah Mitchell, you call that number." "I don't understand." "You don't have to." His fingers brushed mine as I took the card, the contact lasting a fraction of a second, but I felt it everywhere. Warmth and danger and something that made my heart stutter. "Just know that you can." He stepped back, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced efficiency. His men moved simultaneously, one opening the door, the other scanning the street outside. "Wait," I called out, my voice stronger than I felt. "I don't even know your name." He paused at the threshold, November wind catching his dark hair. A slight smile touched his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Nikolai." He said it like a confession. Nikolai Volkov. Then he was gone, sliding into the back of a black SUV with tinted windows that had appeared at the curb as if summoned. The vehicle pulled away smoothly, expensive and silent, leaving only the scent of his cologne and the impossible reality of what had just happened. I looked down at the card in my shaking hand. The silver lettering gleamed, Nikolai Volkov, private consultations, and below it, a phone number. Nothing else. No company name, no address, no hint of what kind of consultations required armed security, and the casual disposal of $500. Miss? The bakery girl's voice seemed to come from very far away. Miss, are you okay? You look pale. I wasn't okay. I was standing in a bakery holding a business card that felt like it was burning my fingers, trying to process that a stranger, a dangerous, powerful stranger who moved through the world like he owned it, had just paid for my son's birthday cake and looked at me like I was something precious instead of invisible. I'm fine, I lied, my voice mechanical. What time should I pick up the cake tomorrow? But I wasn't fine. Because as I walked out of that bakery into the cold November evening, clutching that black card like a lifeline or a curse, I knew that something had shifted. Some door had opened that I wouldn't be able to close, and the most terrifying part was that I wasn't sure I wanted to. I didn't sleep that night. Sleep. Tommy did, curled up in his twin bed with the Captain America sheets I'd found at the thrift store, his breathing soft and even, blissfully unaware of how close he'd come to a birthday without a cake. I sat in our tiny kitchen, the card laid out on the scratched formica table like evidence of a crime I couldn't quite name. The apartment was silent except for the radiator's occasional clank and hiss. Our neighbor's television murmured through the thin walls, some late-night show with canned laughter that felt obscene in its cheerfulness. I traced the embossed lettering with my fingertip, over and over, until I'd memorized every curve and line. Nikolai Volkov. I'd Googled the name on my cracked phone screen, huddled in the bathroom so the light wouldn't wake Tommy. The results were sparse and contradictory. A few mentions in business journals, some charity gala photos where he appeared in the background, always in a perfect suit, always with that same controlled expression. Nothing concrete, nothing that explained the gun I'd glimpsed, or the security detail, or the way he'd looked at me like he could see every scar I'd tried to hide. The clock on the microwave clicked over to 3:47 a.m. In a few hours, Tommy would wake up, would race into my room with that gap-toothed smile, would ask if today was finally his birthday, and for once, I could say yes. Yes, there would be cake. Yes, there would be something special. Yes, I hadn't failed him completely. But the relief was tangled with something darker, something that coiled in my chest like smoke. I didn't know Nikolai Volkov. Didn't know what he wanted, or why he'd helped me, or what private consultations meant in a world where men carried guns under $1,000 suits. My phone buzzed, startling me so badly I knocked over the empty coffee mug beside it. Unknown number. My heart kicked against my ribs as I opened the message. The bakery will deliver the cakes at 2 p.m. No charge. Happy birthday to your son, N. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. He'd arranged delivery. Had somehow gotten my address. That thought should have terrified me, but instead, I felt something warm and dangerous unfurl in my stomach. He was thinking about Tommy's birthday. About making it easier for me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I should thank him. Should maintain some kind of polite distance. Should not, under any circumstances, engage with a man who made my survival instincts scream warning, and my traitorous body respond with something that felt too much like want. Thank you. You didn't have to do this. I typed and deleted it 3 times before finally hitting send. The response came within seconds. He was awake too. I know. Sleep, Sarah. Tomorrow is important. How did he know I wasn't sleeping? I looked around my kitchen instinctively, checking the windows, the shadows. Ridiculous. Paranoid. But his words felt too knowing, too intimate for a stranger. I can't. I typed before I could stop myself. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Why? Because a dangerous man had looked at me like I mattered. Because for the first time in 3 years, someone had seen me, really seen me, and hadn't looked away. Because I was scared and confused, and something in his eyes had made me feel safe and threatened in the same breath. Too much on my mind, I wrote instead. Then, let me take something off it. The delivery is handled. The cakes are handled. All you need to do is watch your son be happy. Can you do that? Tears pricked my eyes, hot and unexpected. When was the last time someone had tried to take care of me? When had anyone asked what I needed instead of what I could give? Yes, I sent back. Good. Now sleep, Sarah. That's an order. I should have been offended by the command. Instead, I found myself smiling, exhausted and bewildered, as I finally crawled into bed. The next morning arrived in a chaos of excitement. Tommy bounced on my bed at exactly 6:32 a.m., his dark hair, so much like his father's, a fact that used to hurt but now just existed, sticking up in every direction. Mama, is it my birthday? Is it really? I pulled him into my arms, breathing in the scent of his strawberry shampoo, feeling his small heart beat against my chest. It's really your birthday, baby. 7 years old, my big man. Do I get presents? His eyes were wide, hopeful in a way that broke something in me. You get something even better. I kissed his forehead. You get a surprise. He vibrated with excitement through breakfast, cereal that I stretched with extra milk to make it last, through getting dressed in his best jeans and the Superman shirt I'd scrubbed clean last night, through the agonizing wait until 2 p.m., when the doorbell finally rang. I opened it to find not a delivery person, but one of Nikolai's men from the bakery. He was massive, with a shaved head and a scar running through his left eyebrow, wearing the same dark suit and watchful expression. Ms. Mitchell. His voice was surprisingly gentle. Delivery from Mr. Volkov. Behind him, 2 more men carried boxes. 4 of them. Not just the Superman cake, but an elaborate chocolate tower, a vanilla creation covered in fresh flowers, and something that looked like it belonged in a palace, gold leaf and pearls and delicate sugarwork that must have cost a fortune. This is too much, I breathed, even as Tommy gasped behind me, his small hands gripping my leg. Mama, is that all for me? The scarred man smiled, and it transformed his face completely. Mr. Volkov wanted to make sure the birthday boy had options, and he handed me an envelope. He also wanted to make sure you had help with the party. What party? I opened the envelope with shaking fingers. Inside was $2,000 in cash and a note in sharp, masculine handwriting. Every 7-year-old deserves a party. Invite his friends. Order pizza. Buy decorations. Let him be a child. You can argue with me later. And I can't, my voice failed. You can. The scarred man's expression softened. Mr. Volkov doesn't offer help lightly. When he does, it's because he means it. My name is Dmitri, and I'll be stationed outside until the party is over. For security. Security? Ice flooded my veins. Why would we need security? Standard procedure, ma'am. Nothing to worry about. But his eyes scanned the hallway, the stairwell, checking exits and angles like he expected trouble. Tommy tugged my hand. Mama, can I have cake now, please? I looked at my son's face, radiant with joy. At the cakes that represented more than just dessert. They represented being seen, being valued, being worth someone's care. At the money that could mean catching up on bills, buying Tommy new shoes, maybe even sleeping without the gnawing fear of eviction. And at Dmitri, who worked for a man I didn't know, representing a world I didn't understand. Give me your phone number, I said suddenly. Nikolai's real number. Dmitri hesitated. Mr. Volkov gave you his card. That's not what I asked. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. He pulled out his phone, typed something, and my phone buzzed. That's his personal line. Use it wisely. Then he helped carry the cakes inside, positioned himself in the hallway, and became as still as a statue. I stared at the new number in my phone as Tommy danced around the cakes, chattering about which one to try first. My finger hovered over the call button. What was I doing? This was insane. Accepting thousands of dollars from a stranger who carried guns and employed armed security. Letting my son eat cake paid for by a man whose business card offered no explanation, only mystery. But Tommy was laughing, really laughing, in a way I hadn't heard in months. I pressed call. He answered on the second ring. Sarah. Not a question. He'd been expecting me. Why? The word came out harder than I intended. Why are you doing this? A pause. I could hear ambient noise in the background. Voices speaking rapid Russian, the sound of a car door closing. Are the cakes there? 4 of them, and $2,000, and a security guard in my hallway. Answer my question. Is your son happy? My eyes found Tommy, who was carefully examining the Superman cake with reverent awe. Yes. Then that's why. His voice dropped, became something more intimate. You needed help. I could provide it. It's simple. Nothing about this is simple. I moved into my bedroom, closing the door. Men like you don't just help people for no reason. Men like me? There was a dark amusement in his tone. What kind of man do you think I am, Sarah? Dangerous, powerful, someone who made my pulse race and my instincts scream in equal measure. I don't know. That's the problem. Then let me take you to dinner, tomorrow night. Let me explain. I don't have anyone to watch Tommy. Dimitri's wife is a retired school teacher. She has grandchildren. She'd be happy to stay with your son. In your apartment, where he's comfortable. He'd thought of everything, anticipated every objection. It should have felt controlling. Instead, it felt like being caught in a current too strong to fight. One dinner, I heard myself say, and you answer my questions, all of them. Deal. I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. I'll send a car at 7. Wear something comfortable. And Sarah? Yes. Thank you for calling. I've been waiting. He hung up before I could respond, leaving me standing in my shabby bedroom with my heart pounding and the certainty that I'd just agreed to something that would change everything. Tommy burst through the door, his face smeared with chocolate frosting. Mama, can I invite Marcus and Jaden, please? We have so much cake. I looked at my son, my beautiful, innocent son, and at the money on my dresser that represented possibility and danger in equal measure. Yes, baby. You can invite whoever you want. As I helped him craft invitations on scrap paper, as neighbors started arriving with wide eyes and delighted children, as our cramped apartment filled with laughter and sugar-high chaos, I felt Dimitri's presence in the hallway like a promise, or a warning. And somewhere across the city, Nikolai Volkov was waiting for tomorrow night, when I'd sit across from him and demand answers to questions I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. The Superman cake was perfect. Tommy's smile was incandescent. And I was falling into something dark and inevitable. One choice at a time. The black car arrived at precisely 7 o'clock. I'd been watching from my window for 20 minutes, my stomach a knot of anxiety and something dangerously close to anticipation. Tommy was on the couch with Dimitri's wife, Elena, a warm woman with silver-streaked hair and laugh lines who'd arrived with homemade cookies and a Mary Poppins energy that had won my son over immediately. You look beautiful, dear, Elena said, as I emerged from my bedroom for the 3rd time, still uncertain about the dress I'd chosen. It was the only one I owned that wasn't for work. A simple navy blue sheath I'd bought years ago for a job interview that never panned out. I'd paired it with my only heels, the ones I'd resoled twice, and attempted something with my hair beyond the perpetual ponytail. I looked terrified, I corrected, checking my reflection in the darkened television screen. That too. She smiled knowingly, but Mr. Volkov is a good man. Intimidating, yes, but good where it counts. I wanted to ask her how she knew him, what she'd seen, what secrets she carried about the man who'd upended my world in 48 hours. But the intercom buzzed, and my courage evaporated. The driver wasn't Dimitri, but another man, younger, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that missed nothing. He opened the rear door of the SUV without a word, and I climbed into leather seats that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The door closed with a solid final thunk. We drove through the city as twilight bled into night, leaving my neighborhood's cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights behind. The buildings grew taller, cleaner, more expensive. My reflection in the tinted window looked like a ghost, pale and insubstantial against the glittering cityscape. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to a restaurant I'd only seen in magazines, The kind of place where reservations required months of notice and entrees cost triple digits. Panic clawed up my throat. I can't, I started, but the driver was already opening my door. "Mr. Volkov is waiting, Ms. Mitchell." The restaurant's exterior was understated elegance. Dark brick, a single brass plaque, no obvious signage. The door opened before we reached it, held by a man in a pristine suit who nodded respectfully. Inside was warmth, an amber light, the scent of truffle and wine and old money. But the main dining room was empty, completely empty. My heels clicked too loudly on marble floors as I followed the maitre d' through the vacant space. Every table was set with crystal and silver, candles flickering, but no one sat at them. Did he? I couldn't finish the question. Mr. Volkov reserved the entire restaurant for the evening, the maitre d' said smoothly, as if this were normal, as if men did this every day. He led me to a private room in the back, separated by frosted glass doors etched with intricate patterns. Through them, I could see a single table and a figure rising from his chair. The doors opened. Nikolai stood backlit by candlelight, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. He wore black again, seemed to prefer it, but tonight it was more casual. Black slacks, black shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, revealing more of those tattoos, ink that looked Cyrillic, religious icons mixed with symbols I didn't recognize. His eyes found mine immediately, and the intensity in them made my knees weak. "Sarah." He moved around the table with that controlled grace, and suddenly he was close enough that I could smell his cologne again, could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You look beautiful. You rented out an entire restaurant." It came out accusatory. I wanted privacy, to talk without interruption. He pulled out my chair, his hand briefly touching the small of my back, and electricity shot up my spine. "Is that a crime?" I sat because my legs weren't trustworthy. "I don't know. Is it?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips as he returned to his seat. Direct. "I like that." A waiter appeared. From where? I couldn't say, and poured wine into my glass. Red, dark as blood. I didn't touch it. "You said you'd answer my questions," I said, gripping my hands together in my lap to keep them from shaking. "I did." He leaned back, completely relaxed, like we were discussing the weather instead of whatever this was. "Ask." "Who are you? Really, I told you. Nikolai Volkov." "That's a name, not an answer." His smile widened fractionally. "I'm a businessman. I handle acquisitions, negotiations, problem-solving for people who need discretion. That's the vaguest answer I've ever heard." "It's also the truth." He picked up his wine, swirled it, watching me over the rim. "Though perhaps not the complete truth you're looking for. The gun," I said bluntly. "The security. The way people look at you like you're dangerous. What business requires all that?" He set down his glass very carefully. For a long moment, he just studied me, and I forced myself not to look away, not to flinch. "The kind of business that exists in the spaces between legal and necessary," he said finally. "I protect people. I solve problems that the police can't or won't touch. I make sure certain transactions happen smoothly, that certain people are held accountable when the law fails. You're a criminal." The words hung between us. "I'm a realist. No shame, no justification, just fact. The world isn't black and white, Sarah. It's mostly gray, and someone has to navigate those shadows. I chose to be that someone." My heart hammered. I should leave. Should grab my coat and run back to my safe, small life where men didn't casually admit to operating outside the law. "Why me?" I whispered instead. "Out of everyone you could help, why did you choose me?" Something shifted in his expression. A crack in that controlled facade. "You reminded me of someone." "Who?" "My mother." The words were quiet, weighted with old pain. She was alone, struggling to raise me after my father was killed. I watched her sacrifice everything. Her health, her happiness, her pride. Trying to give me a childhood, trying to make sure I had birthday cakes and new shoes, and didn't know how close we were to losing everything. His jaw tightened, and I saw the shadow of the boy he'd been in the hard lines of the man he'd become. I was 7 when I watched her cancel my birthday cake because she couldn't afford it. She thought I was asleep, but I heard her crying in the kitchen afterward. That sound... He stopped, swallowed. I swore I'd never be powerless like that again, that I'd never watch someone suffer when I had the means to help. Oh God. My chest constricted painfully. When I saw you in that bakery, he continued, his eyes locked on mine, canceling your son's cake, trying so hard to hold yourself together while falling apart inside. I saw her, and I saw you, and I couldn't walk away. So this is charity. The word tasted bitter. You're easing your guilt. He leaned forward. No, and the sudden movement made me jump. This isn't guilt. This is recognition. You're strong, Sarah. Stronger than you know. But strength shouldn't mean suffering alone. The waiter returned with plates I didn't remember ordering. Some kind of fish. Vegetables arranged like art. I couldn't imagine eating. I can't be your project, I said, my voice unsteady. I can't be the person you save to make yourself feel better about whatever you do in those gray spaces. You're not a project. His hand moved across the table, stopping just short of touching mine. He trailed off, something almost vulnerable crossing his features. I'm what? I barely breathed the question. You're someone I can't stop thinking about. The admission seemed to cost him. From the moment you looked at me with all that pride and fear and desperation, I haven't been able to get you out of my head. The way you stood there, choosing your son over your dignity. The way you've kept fighting even when everything's against you. You're extraordinary, and you don't even see it. Heat flooded through me, dangerous and intoxicating. You don't know me. Then let me. His fingers finally made contact, barely brushing my knuckles, but I felt it everywhere. Let me know you, Sarah. No obligations, no expectations. Just let me in. This was insane. He was a criminal, had admitted it without flinching. He lived in a world of guns and security details and shadows I couldn't begin to understand. Getting involved with him was the definition of reckless. But his touch was gentle. His eyes held mine with an honesty that felt more real than anything I'd experienced in years. And God help me. I was so tired of being alone. I have a son, I said, testing. He comes first. Always. As he should. I won't be some secret you keep hidden away. I won't be ashamed of who I am or where I come from. I would never ask you to be. His hand fully covered mine now, warm and solid and anchoring. I want people to see you with me. I want them to know you're under my protection. Protection? The word snagged. From what? His expression darkened. My world has enemies, Sarah. If people know you matter to me, there could be risks. I need you to understand that before this goes any further. Fear spiked, cold and sharp. You're saying my son could be in danger because of you? I'm saying I would never let anything happen to either of you. His grip tightened slightly. Dimitri outside your apartment? That's not temporary. If you choose this, choose me, you'll both have protection. Always. No one touches what's mine. What's mine. The possessiveness should have alarmed me. Instead, it sent a thrill down my spine that I couldn't explain or excuse. This is crazy, I breathed. Yes. He turned my hand over, his thumb tracing my palm, the calluses there from years of hard work. But tell me you don't feel it too, this pull between us. Tell me I'm alone in this. I couldn't. Because I did feel it. Had felt it from that first moment in the bakery when his eyes had seen past all my armor straight to the raw, desperate woman beneath. I felt it now, sitting in this empty restaurant while he held my hand like it was something precious, looking at me like I was the only person in the world. I feel it, I admitted, and something fierce and triumphant flashed in his eyes. Then have dinner with me. Talk to me. Let me court you properly the way you deserve. Court me? A surprised laugh escaped. People don't say that anymore. I do. He raised my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that sent fire through my veins. Because you deserve romance, Sarah. Deserve to be cherished, not just survived with. Let me show you what that looks like. The waiter appeared again, refilling wine, adjusting candles, disappearing into shadows. The food sat untouched between us, growing cold, but neither of us moved to eat. "One condition," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You're honest with me. Always. I don't need to know every detail of your business, but don't lie to me. I've had enough lies for one lifetime." Darkness flickered across his face. Tommy's father didn't stay, didn't care, taught me that pretty words mean nothing without action. Then watch my actions. He still held my hand, his thumb moving in slow circles that made it hard to think. "I'll prove to you that I'm different, that when I give my word, I keep it." We finally ate, though I barely tasted anything. We talked about his mother, who died when he was 15, leaving him alone to navigate the criminal empire his father had built. About my dreams of becoming a teacher before Tommy came along and reality intervened. About books and music and the strange intimacy of sharing truths in candlelight. When the car dropped me home at midnight, Elena reported that Tommy had been perfect, was sleeping peacefully, and that she'd be happy to sit again any time. As I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, my lips still tingling from the brief, devastating kiss Nikolai had given me before I left, I realized I'd crossed a threshold I couldn't uncross. I'd let the devil in, and God help me. I wanted to see where he'd lead. The flowers arrived the next morning. Not a simple bouquet, but an explosion of white roses, at least 3 dozen, arranged in a crystal vase that caught the morning light and scattered rainbows across my kitchen wall. The card was simple, written in that sharp handwriting I was beginning to recognize, "For making last night the best evening I've had in years. Dinner again Friday?" And Tommy stood on a chair, trying to count the petals, his cereal forgotten. "Mama, who sent these? Are they for your birthday too?" "A friend," I said, the word feeling insufficient and dangerous all at once. My phone buzzed. Nikolai, because of course it was. "Did they arrive safely?" I photographed Tommy examining the flowers with scientific intensity and sent it without thinking. "He's trying to count them. This is too much. Nothing is too much for you. Say yes to Friday." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was moving fast. Too fast. 3 days ago, I'd been invisible, drowning, alone. Now I had roses in my kitchen, and a man who looked at me like I was worth something asking me to dinner again. Yes, but somewhere less extravagant. "Impossible. You deserve extravagance. I'll pick you up at 7. I should have argued. Should have established boundaries, maintained distance. Instead, I found myself smiling at my phone like a teenager. The next 3 days passed in a blur of normalcy, punctuated by moments that felt anything but normal. Dmitri remained stationed outside our building, just until Mr. Volkov is satisfied with the security assessment, he'd said, which explained nothing and everything. Neighbors whispered, curious about the well-dressed man who'd appeared on our floor like a designer-clad guardian angel. Nikolai texted throughout each day, never intrusive, never demanding, just there. A photo of his morning coffee with the caption, "Thinking of you." A question about Tommy's favorite superhero. A link to a news article about teacher scholarships with the message "Something to consider." Each interaction felt like a thread being woven between us, connecting me to a world I didn't understand, but found myself increasingly drawn to. Friday arrived with November rain, the kind that made the city look blurred and melancholy. I'd spent the afternoon at my waitressing job, 4 hours on my feet, smiling through demands and complaints, pocketing tips that would barely cover groceries. The contrast between that world and Nikolai's felt impossible to reconcile. But at 6:45, I found myself in my navy dress again, heart pounding, while Elena entertained Tommy with stories about her grandchildren. This time, when the car arrived, Nikolai himself emerged from the back seat, black umbrella in hand, striding toward my building like he owned the rain itself. I met him in the lobby, and the look on his face when he saw me made my breath catch. "You're even more beautiful than I remembered," he said, his voice low and rough. He held out his hand. "Come." The restaurant this time was different. Still expensive, still private, but warmer. A rooftop garden under glass, heated against the November chill, with the city lights spread below us like scattered diamonds. Rain drummed against the transparent ceiling, creating a cocoon of sound that made the rest of the world disappear. You didn't rent out the entire place this time, I observed as we were seated at a table surrounded by climbing jasmine. I learned my lesson. His smile was almost boyish. You prefer subtle to ostentatious. I prefer real. I settled into my chair, accepting the wine menu I wouldn't know how to navigate. This is beautiful, but it's not you, is it? This isn't where you'd normally eat. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe respect. No. Normally I eat in my office, standing up, while dealing with problems that can't wait. Then why bring me here? Because you deserve beauty. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, giving me his complete attention. And because I'm trying to impress you. Why? The question escaped before I could filter it. You could have anyone. Women who fit into this world, who understand your life. Why are you trying to impress a broke single mother from the wrong side of town? Because those women bore me. Blunt, honest. They want my money, or my power, or the danger they think I represent. You want none of those things. You looked at me in that bakery like I was an inconvenience and a miracle simultaneously. Do you know how rare that is, to be seen as a person instead of a resource? Rain intensified overhead, and I watched water cascade down the glass, distorting the city beyond. You're romanticizing me. I'm not some noble martyr. I'm just trying to survive. You're trying to do more than survive. You're trying to give your son a life you never had. You work yourself to exhaustion for his smile. That's not just survival, Sarah. That's love fierce enough to remake the world. His words pierced something deep, and I had to look away before the emotion building in my chest escaped. Tell me about Tommy's father, Nikolai said quietly. What happened? I took a long sip of wine before answering. His name was Marcus. We were young, in love, or what I thought was love. When I got pregnant, he said all the right things. Promised marriage, family, forever. The familiar bitterness rose. Then his parents found out. I wasn't good enough. Didn't come from the right background. They offered me money to disappear. Did you take it? No judgment in his voice, just curiosity. No. I thought Marcus would choose me, would stand up to them. I laughed without humor. Instead, he took the money they offered him. A trust fund, a job in their company, and left. I haven't heard from him in 6 years. Tommy doesn't even know his name. Nikolai's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his skin. When he spoke, his voice was cold. Give me his full name. Why? Because men who abandon their children deserve consequences. Ice flooded my veins. No. Nikolai, whatever you're thinking, I'm thinking that he should contribute to his son's welfare, financially, at minimum. His eyes were dark, dangerous. I'm thinking that I could make a few calls, ensure he understands his obligations. That's not your decision to make. I kept my voice firm despite the fear threading through it. Tommy is my responsibility. I don't want Marcus's money, and I don't want you. I stopped, searching for words. I don't want you to hurt him. I wouldn't hurt him. A pause. Much. Nikolai. He sighed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. You're asking me to let this go? To allow him to live comfortably while you struggle? I'm asking you to respect my choices, even when you disagree with them. We stared at each other across candlelight and jasmine, wills locked. Finally, he nodded slowly. Fine. But if you ever change your mind, I'll tell you. I softened my tone. Thank you for caring, but I fight my own battles. I'm learning that. He reached across the table, his fingers finding mine. Though I don't like it, everything in me wants to eliminate every obstacle in your path. Destroy everyone who's ever hurt you. That's terrifying. I know. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. I told you I wasn't safe, Sarah. We ate. Some kind of seafood that melted on my tongue. Vegetables I couldn't name. Dessert that was more art than food. Between courses, we talked. He told me about growing up in Russia, immigrating at 12 after his father's murder, learning to navigate American streets while never forgetting the old country's harsh lessons. I told him about my mother, who died when I was 19, leaving me alone in the world, about dreams of teaching that had evaporated when reality intervened, about the strange guilt of loving Tommy completely while mourning the life I'd never have. You could still teach, Nikolai said as dessert plates were cleared. I saw how you light up when you talk about it. There are programs, scholarships. I can't afford childcare and tuition. Can barely afford rent. What if money wasn't an obstacle? Warning bells rang. I'm not taking your money for school. Why not? You accepted help for Tommy's birthday. That was different. That was one thing, one moment. That's my life. My future. I can't build it on your charity. His hand tightened on mine. It's not charity when I care about you. When your happiness matters to me. We've known each other less than a week. And yet I can't remember what my life looked like before you were in it. The raw honesty in his voice stopped my breath. I know this is fast. I know I should give you time, space. Let this develop naturally. But I've never been patient with things I want, Sarah. And I want you. The air between us felt charged, electric. Rain continued its percussion overhead, cocooning us from reality. I want you too, I admitted, the words terrifying and liberating simultaneously. But I'm scared. Of your world. Of getting hurt. Of what this means for Tommy. Then let me take that fear away. He stood abruptly, coming around the table to kneel beside my chair. His hands framed my face, gentle despite their scarred strength. Let me protect you, both of you. Let me be what you need. You can't promise that. Life doesn't work that way. My life does. His thumb traced my cheekbone and I shivered. In my world, what I claim stays claimed. What I protect stays protected. If you're mine, Sarah, you're untouchable. I'm not a possession. No, you're so much more. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my lips. You're the first real thing I've wanted in years. The first person who makes me want to be better instead of just more powerful. Then he kissed me. Not the brief, restrained kiss from our first dinner, but something deep and claiming and desperate. I tasted wine and rain and want, felt his control fracture as my fingers buried in his hair, pulling him closer. The world narrowed to his mouth on mine, his hands sliding into my hair, the low sound he made when I opened for him. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. Come home with me, he whispered. Just come home with me. Let me show you where I live, who I am when I'm not trying to impress you. Every rational instinct screamed no. It was too soon, too fast, too dangerous. But his eyes held mine, dark and wanting and vulnerable in a way I suspected he rarely allowed. Okay, I breathed. His smile was brilliant and brief before he kissed me again, harder this time, like he was sealing a promise neither of us had fully articulated, as the car drove us through rain-slicked streets toward whatever came next. His hand never left mine, and I realized I'd stopped thinking about exits, stopped planning my escape. For better or worse, I was falling. And Nikolai Volkov was right there, ready to catch me or drag me down with him. Either way, I couldn't bring myself to let go. His home wasn't what I expected. The building itself was imposing, a converted warehouse in a neighborhood that had gentrified beyond recognition. All exposed brick and massive windows overlooking the river. Security was subtle but present. Cameras, a doorman who nodded respectfully as we entered, card reader access to a private elevator. But when the elevator doors opened directly into his penthouse, I found myself in a space that felt almost lived in. Yes, it was expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows, original artwork, furniture that probably cost more than I'd earn in 5 years. But there were also books scattered on the coffee table, a half-empty glass of whiskey on the kitchen counter, a worn leather jacket thrown over a chair, signs of an actual person, not just wealth. This is home, Nikolai said, watching my reaction carefully. He shrugged out of his suit jacket, draping it over the back of a chair. And suddenly he looked younger, less intimidating. Just a man in his home, wanting me to see him clearly. I walked to the windows, drawn by the view. The city sprawled below, lights reflecting off the rain-dark river. From up here, everything looked small, manageable. Not the chaotic struggle I navigated daily, but something almost beautiful. I grew up in a one-bedroom apartment with cockroaches and a landlord who shut off the heat every winter, Nikolai said quietly, coming to stand beside me. My mother and I shared the bedroom. I slept on a mattress on the floor. He gestured at the space around us. This was impossible. A dream so far beyond my reach I couldn't even articulate it. I looked at him, seeing the shadow of that boy in the hard-won success of the man. When did it change? I asked. When I was 16. A man named Victor saw potential in me, saw that I was smart, ruthless when necessary, and willing to do what others wouldn't. His jaw tightened. He brought me into the organization, taught me the business. Within 5 years, I'd taken over his territory. Within 10, I'd expanded operations across 3 states. And Victor? Retired comfortably to the Mediterranean. We still talk monthly. A slight smile. Not everyone in my world ends in violence, Sarah. Some stories have happy endings. He moved to the kitchen, pulled out a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Poured 2 glasses without asking, handed me one. "Tell me what you're thinking," he said. "I can see your mind working." I took a sip, letting the wine ground me. "I'm thinking about Tommy, about what it means if I let this continue. If I let you into our lives. And I'm terrified. The admission cost me, but I forced it out. What happens when he gets attached to you? When he starts to depend on you being there? What happens when your world catches up to us? When some enemy decides we're a weakness to exploit?" Nikolai set down his glass very deliberately. "Come with me." He led me down a hallway to a room I hadn't noticed before. When he opened the door, I gasped. It was an office, clearly his workspace, with a massive desk, multiple monitors, filing cabinets with serious locks, but along one wall was something that made my throat close up. Photographs. Dozens of them, professionally framed. His mother, young and beautiful, smiling at the camera with a small, dark-haired boy on her hip. That same boy at various ages, 7, 10, 13, always with his mother, always looking at her like she hung the moon. And in the corner, a child's drawing under glass, crayon stick figures labeled Mama and Me, with a lopsided birthday cake between them. "I kept everything," Nikolai said quietly. "Every photo, every drawing, every report card where she wrote notes in the margins about how proud she was, because she sacrificed everything for me, and I needed to remember. Needed to make sure that when I had the power, I used it to protect people like her." He turned to face me, and the vulnerability in his eyes was staggering. "I understand your fear, Sarah. I understand why you want to protect Tommy from potential pain, but I need you to understand something too." He stepped closer, his hands gentle on my shoulders. "I don't do anything halfway. If I commit to you, to him, I'm all in. Not just for now, not just until it gets difficult. Forever." "You can't promise forever. Watch me." His intensity was almost frightening. "I've built an empire from nothing. I've survived enemies who wanted me dead, betrayals that should have destroyed me. If I say I'll protect you and your son, I will. If I say you're mine, you are. And nothing will change that." His hands slid up to frame my face, thumbs brushing my cheekbones. "I'm asking you to trust me," he said, his voice rough. "I know I haven't earned it yet. I know my world is dangerous and my past is violent, but I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that I can be what you need. What Tommy needs." Tears burned behind my eyes. "What if you get hurt? What if something happens to you, and we're left? I have legal documents being prepared as we speak." His practicality shouldn't have been comforting, but it was. "If anything happens to me, you and Tommy are provided for. Trust funds, property, everything managed by people I trust, absolutely. You'll never be vulnerable again. I don't want your money. I know." He kissed my forehead, lingering. "That's exactly why I'm giving it to you. Because you don't want it, don't expect it, but you deserve it. Both of you." I pulled back, looking up at him through blurred vision. "This is insane. We barely know each other." "Then let's fix that." He took my hand, pulled me back to the living room, to the enormous couch facing those floor-to-ceiling windows. We sat, and he turned to face me, his expression open in a way I suspected he rarely allowed. "Ask me anything, everything. No filters, no evasions. You want honesty? I'll give you complete transparency." So I asked. About his business. And he explained the gray areas, the protection rackets that actually protected, the enforcement that kept worse predators at bay. About violence, and he admitted to things that should have sent me running, but he owned them without excuse or justification. Just cold fact. About relationships, and he told me there had been women, transactions more than connections. Nothing that had ever felt like this consuming need to know someone, to protect them, to claim them so completely the rest of the world understood they were untouchable. Why me? I asked again, because I still couldn't reconcile it. Really? Not the story about your mother, not the moment in the bakery. Why do you look at me like I'm something precious when I'm just ordinary? You're not ordinary. He pulled me closer, until I was tucked against his side, his arm around my shoulders. You're extraordinary in the way that matters. You love fiercely. You protect what's yours. You keep fighting even when everything says to give up. That strength, that resilience. His voice roughened. That's what drew me. That's what made me look at you and think, her. She's the one who could stand beside me instead of behind me. I tilted my head back to look at him. I don't know how to be in your world. You don't have to be in my world. You just have to be in my life. His hand came up, fingers threading through my hair. I'll keep the darkness away from you. You and Tommy, you'll have normal, safe, everything you deserve. I'll be the bridge between worlds. That sounds lonely for you. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, that I'd thought about his needs. It won't be lonely if you're waiting when I come home. The words hung between us, weighted with implications neither of us was quite ready to voice. I should get back, I said, though I didn't move. Tommy will wake up wondering, stay. His arms tightened slightly, just a little longer. Let me hold you. So I stayed, tucked against his warmth while rain continued its symphony against the windows. We talked about nothing important, favorite movies, worst jobs, the embarrassing stories everyone accumulates. Normal conversation, the kind that built foundation instead of just intensity. Somewhere around midnight, I must have dozed off, because I woke to Nikolai carrying me to his car, his jacket draped over my shoulders. I can walk, I mumbled, still sleep-fogged. I know. He settled me in the back seat, slid in beside me, but I wanted to carry you. The drive back to my neighborhood felt too short. When we pulled up to my building, Dmitri was still there, standing sentinel like he'd never left. Nikolai walked me to my door, his hand warm on the small of my back. At my threshold, he turned me to face him. I meant what I said, all of it. His hands cupped my face, and the tenderness in his touch made my chest ache. You're mine now, Sarah, and I take care of what's mine. Possessive, I said, but there was no heat in it. Completely. He smiled, slow and dangerous and devastating. Get used to it. Then he kissed me, deep and thorough and claiming, until I was boneless against him, my fingers clutched in his shirt. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were dark with want barely restrained. I'll call you tomorrow, he said, his voice rough. Sleep well. I watched him walk away, watched the elevator doors close on his intense gaze. Inside my apartment, Elena was asleep on the couch, and Tommy was curled up in his bed, peaceful and safe. I stood in my kitchen, touching my lips where I could still feel Nikolai's kiss, and tried to process what I'd just agreed to, what I'd let into our lives. The next morning, I woke to my phone buzzing, not a text, but a notification from my bank. My account, which had held exactly $347, now showed a balance of $50,347. I called Nikolai immediately, my hands shaking with anger and something else. Good morning, he answered, sounding pleased with himself. What did you do? I took care of you. Isn't that what we discussed? We discussed you respecting my choices. Not just, Nikolai, I can't accept this. You can, and you will. His voice turned firm. That money is for Tommy's future, for your bills, for you to breathe without drowning. It's not charity, Sarah. It's me taking care of what's mine. I'm not mine, he repeated, implacable. You accepted that last night. This is what it means. I provide, I protect. I make sure you never have to choose between your son's medicine and his birthday cake again. I wanted to argue, wanted to maintain my independence, my pride, But God, the relief of seeing that number, of knowing Tommy's needs were covered, of having a buffer against the constant crisis. "This doesn't mean I'm going to stop working," I said finally. "I would never ask you to," his tone softened. "But maybe you can work because you want to, not because you'll be homeless if you don't. Maybe you can consider that teaching program. Maybe you can actually rest occasionally." Tears spilled over, and I swiped at them angrily. "You're impossible. I'm yours. Simple, final. Get used to that too." Over the following weeks, my life transformed in ways both subtle and profound. Nikolai was a constant presence, not smothering, but there. Daily calls, frequent visits, integration into Tommy's life that was so natural. My son started asking when Nick would come over. He taught Tommy chess on my kitchen table, his patience infinite as he explained strategies. He showed up at my waitressing job and left tips that made my boss suspicious. He bought Tommy new shoes without asking, claiming he'd seen them and thought of my son. The security remained. Dmitri became a fixture, eventually bringing Elena around so often that Tommy had adopted grandparents he'd never had before, and Nikolai kept his promises. When my landlord tried to raise my rent illegally, it was handled. Suddenly, my lease was revised with protections I hadn't negotiated. When my car broke down, a newer model appeared in my parking spot. When I protested, Nikolai simply said, "I'm taking care of what's mine," and kissed me until I forgot why I was arguing. 2 months after that first meeting in the bakery, Nikolai asked me to move in with him. I said yes, because somewhere between the birthday cake and the business card, between his confessions and his control, I'd fallen completely in love with the dangerous man who looked at me like I was his salvation. And when I finally told him I loved him, standing in his kitchen while Tommy played in the next room, he pulled me close and whispered, "I loved you from the moment you tried to cancel that cake. I just had to wait for you to catch up." Our life wasn't perfect. His world still had dangers, still had moments that reminded me who he was and what he did. But he kept his darkness away from us, kept Tommy and me safe in the light he'd built. And every year on Tommy's birthday, there were 4 cakes. A reminder of where we'd started and a promise of everything we'd become.